I want to welcome you to Woolly Doodles Unplugged. My name is Kathy and I'm going to show you how to string up a bird. So you've most likely taken one of my bird workshops and now you want to have a video to watch so that you could actually like string this up at your leisure. As you can see, I've got my bird hanging on a string that I attached using crimp beads and nylon cord. And then I have a needle that can actually go through the thickness of my bird. The goal when you're stringing up your bird is to make sure that the head isn't tilted straight up or straight down. You want to get a more natural balance of your bird. If you have your bird curved or not, it's going to make a difference. The wings, I find that if my one wing is down more, it's going to tilt the bird. Also, you have to be careful and try to make the wings about the same thickness and just make sure they're in about the same spot. But you can adjust some of that after you've strung up your bird. So I'm going to do a close-up, get you a little closer as I'm sewing this on so that you can see what I did to balance this. I call this unplugged because I'm not going to not record any mistakes that I make. It took me about 3 times to get this bird to balance properly. I've sometimes spent about 7 or 8 tries for it, but not to be discouraged, it's just trying to get that balance can be a little difficult. So why don't I go ahead and show you how to do that. Okay, so this is the bird that I'm going to string up. Here's my other bird I'll use as reference. So the materials that you need are, you need a nylon cord, which could be fishing line. This is craft cord, so I tend to use the craft cord, and you want to have enough thickness it won't break. I have a sewing needle, and I have to make sure that my sewing needle can go through this entire bird, so I have one of the larger of the sewing needles. I will take a picture of everything and post it in this video. A pair of sharper scissors. I use Fiskars, but you can use any pair of scissors that gets a nice clean cut. And then for the crimp beads, so I have these little teeny crimp beads. Mine are 2 millimeter. They're quite small. If you took a class, you have received some in your kit. They like to roll around, so just be careful. And then you need these pliers. You just need a pair of craft pliers. I guess any plier would work that you will squeeze the crimp beads on to attach them. So I'm going to move my little crimp beads aside. And I'm going to move these crimp beads aside because I know I'll knock them around. Okay, so for now I'm going to move this stuff out of my line of sight that I don't need. And first I want to cut my cord. And I usually wind up going maybe about, I say maybe around 10 to 12 inches, depending on how long of a cord you want on your bird. I always give myself a little bit of extra, so when I do the crimp beads at the bottom, that I make sure that I have enough string to go through and get it to about the length that I want when it goes through the back. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I am taking the crimp bead. Sorry, it's hard for me to see. I'm putting it onto my nylon cord. And I'm going to take my pliers and I'm now going to just squeeze pretty hard onto the cord. And I hope you can see that it's now on my cord. I'm going to just cut this extra little bit off on the one end. Make sure it's only the little end that you trim off. And now I've got this wire with a crimp bead squished onto the end. All right, so I got my little crimp bead. Okay, so now is the balancing act with my bird. So I'm going to thread up. There we go. Luckily nylon's pretty easy, especially when you have a large eye in your needle. So I've strung it through. And now I'm going to, curved this cardinal a little bit more than the cardinal that I showed you when we started. So where I start to figure out the balance is I might hold it in my hand, very, very gently balance it between my fingers to see where could this start like balance out, right? And you'd know because it won't fall off. So if I try to come too far back, my bird falls forward. If I try to come too far front, my bird falls, oops, right? It's careful balancing act. So I'm going to guess that I need to keep mine a little bit more toward the center of the body. In the case of this bird, I started here and I came up through here. So I did go on an angle. I went on an angle like basically just a slight angle for this bird. You see where this gets a little complicated? So I'm going to start on one end. So I like to go on either end. And when I come up through, I try to stay close to the wing. So I try to stay closer to the side of the body when I put the needle in. And then when I come up, I like to keep it more next to the wing. I think that this one's going to need, I think this particular bird's going to need it a little more straight up and down as opposed to the diagonal. Now I could be wrong. So what I'm doing now is I've got the needle coming through the other side, so I pushed my needle through and now I'm going to pull it until that crimp bead stops. So right now my little crimp bead is here and my string is coming through right on the wing. So I'm going to try to get it to go through the exact same side on the other wing. And I don't use a ruler. I try to eyeball it, but you could use a ruler to just kind of say, is this going to go straight across? All right, so now I'm sticking the needle through in the spot on the other side. And now I got to be careful. Where do I push through at the bottom? And I try to go in the same spot that I was. Now, something you could do before you, wait, oops, there we go, came undone. Actually, once I pull it through, then I will tell you the next step. See, look at it's curly, it's unplugged, everyone, unplugged. Okay, so now I'm going to string this back through. Okay, so now I'm just going to push this through. It's in about the same spot as my other crimp bead. So I pulled it through. And now I'm going to hold. Now I'm going to hold the bottom as I see how is this angled up. So I hope you can see as I'm looking at it. I actually think I got it pretty good on the first try. All right, this was not practiced. I swear it has not been. I noticed that it's kind of angling left or right. That's more the wings, but I think I've got it. So I'm going to take my second crimp bead. I like to have it hang a bit above the cardinal. So I would say somewhere around maybe 4 or 5 inches. That you want this part here to string up. I usually base it maybe about an inch above where the wings would sit. You can go taller if you want. I don't know if I would go any shorter than that, just because I'd want to make sure I have enough height, especially if you're going to hang this like where you're going to have air circulation. Okay, so now I'm going to put my crimp bead on over the other side, take my pliers. Now this is where you double check, make sure right, that you have the length of wire that you want above your bird. I have a little bit of wire left at the bottom, and now I'm just going to carefully, just going to take hold of the one, well actually just so you can see, I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to now squeeze. I just squeeze that crimp bead on. and just taking a quick look, and I think it's hanging pretty good. Yep, that's exactly where I would want to hang it. So now I will cut this piece off. And this is where I can fix anything, all right? So if my one wing, like I'm feeling the wings, they feel about the same. I feel like that, but this wing is a little taller. So I can either trim some of the locks off, or I can just kind of, you could just slightly push it down to balance it. You could push them both up and see, as long as they are even and your bird's not tilting left or right. So one last thing that I like to do with the cardinal, see now this is where I get stumped with the nylon cord. Sometimes it doesn't want to come out even though I have it broken, so I can access it. There we go. So I'm going to pull off a smaller piece, maybe like I guess this would probably be about 4 inches. So I would say if this is 4 inches, you'll wanna maybe pull like a 16-inch piece off of nylon when you string up your bird initially. So now what I do is I take that little string and I'm going to tie it, and I tie it 4 times to make a loop at the top. This is really going to help your bird spin. So I leave a smaller loop. You can use basically any hook, or I usually tend to use Christmas hooks. I like those little curly ones for my display. And I'm going to tie 1 knot. All right, so I tied 2 knots. Now you've got to be careful because if you keep pulling, you're going to lose your hoop here. So I tie it and I hold my finger at the base, and now you're going to need to tie it twice more. So I'll flip it to one, so I'll rotate it to one side and I'll tie another knot. I know it's hard to see. Fingers everywhere. Oop, see, it didn't tie. See, working with nylon is quite, it's a learning experience for sure. You want to make sure that depending on the loop size you make, that you also have enough on the tail and like on both these ends to make sure you get a good tie. So this is 3. A lot of times I'll take my tooth and I'll pull. You can't see it, but and when I talk about rotating, right, what I do is I'll tie one side, then I will flip it over and then tie the other side. I find that gives me a tighter knot as opposed to just tying on the same string, because nylon will come undone. But luckily it's nylon. It's nylon cord. Right? It's not that expensive. Like I said, you could use fishing line, or you could buy some from the craft store. All right, so there, and then I used my teeth. Yes, everyone. I don't think you could see that on camera. I got a close up here, but so now I'm going to cut those ends off. All right, I'm going to switch my camera views and I'll show you my 2 birds flying. So there you have it. This is how my bird is hanging. And so if you don't add here's my other bird. If you don't add this extra piece, it won't spin. So you have options, right? So you can either add the extra string at the top, this hoop at the top, and where it'll spin more, or you could just have it static and just have it centered in the middle. And that is it. So if you have any questions, just send me an email and I will be more than happy to work with you on this. and send me photos. I want to see all the great birds that you create, because once you create a cardinal, you can pretty much create any bird. And just remember, if you curve your birds, if say you make a hummingbird and you curve it, you'll most likely have to come up from the bottom and go more toward the top. So there'll be a deeper angle on your bird. But I find when I make the bird straighter like this, they tend to need to be more centered. So anyway, thank you very much and have a great day.